Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Black and Blurred.
Hi,
That's Darren.
it's me.
I'm Brandon. Guys, we have another episode for you. It's been a while since we've gotten an episode to you. We're going to jump into this. Darren,
Yes.
what would you say the movie Sinners, the book of Genesis, and Travis Scott have in common?
They all include something spiritual.
Who knows? We'll find out. We'll find out. I had zero plans of seeing the movie Sinners. Now, you haven't seen it. Oh, no, you saw it. You saw it before me. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I told you to watch it on my thing.
That's true. That's true. And I didn't do that. But the reason I didn't plan on seeing it.
Me either.
But so many people were talking about it. I always like to watch a movie to be able to talk about it. That's why. I think we're in the same boat. We watch movies to be able to comment on it.
Yeah.
That might not be people's cup of tea. But I don't think there's any other reason to watch a movie unless you are willingly going in to be manipulated.
Yeah.
I think you should be able to digest and analyze what you're digesting. And so more and more people were reaching out and asking me if I had seen it. It came up in our men's Bible study. And so I said, okay, well, I'm going to watch it. But before we touch on Sinners, we want to guide people of why we're talking about the movie Sinners and what we want to talk about. Specifically, what we want to talk about is how people need to be aware of the goals of Hollywood. This is not new information on our podcast. I don't even know how many years ago it was. We did Out of Dark. What is it called? Out of Shadows.
Shoot, that was early, man.
Yeah, that episode. But I actually reached out to a couple people on Facebook. I just posted a status. I like to kind of like engage people on there that way. And this is what I asked. Let me see if I can share this that way. What just happened there?
Brandon's watching Matilda.
Let's get that off. And let's bring that on. There we go. That's better. Let's do it this way. So, this is what I asked. I said, let's ponder together. The full thoughts of the movie Sinners is in this episode. But I finally got around to seeing Sinners, and obviously my thoughts won't shock people who know me. However, after reading articles about the film, I'm more inclined to find out how many people believe that Hollywood has an earnest desire to educate the populace toward flourishing. Here's my question. If we, with discernment, look to film and entertainment as a means to understand the world and grow through that understanding, will society be a better place or worse off? Said more plainly, this is me not reading, this is just speaking. If we even decide to say, look, I'm going to have some discernment and I'm going to use Hollywood as a way to understand the world and grow through that understanding. If everyone made that decision, would the world be better or worse off? And I wanted to hear people's thoughts. And a couple people responded. Terrell Poston said, much worse. Film entertainment often negates or over-exaggerates parts of life for dramatic effect. So a lot of choices being portrayed on screen, if made in real life, would probably be far more detrimental. Jeremy Webb, who is a cinephile like me, said, I don't know about society, but I've been abundantly blessed through a lifetime of thinking about and thinking through movies. My earliest movie memory was of being allowed to stay up and watch Spielberg's first feature film, Duel, on television. I'm not going to read all of every comment. Rod Money says, very much worse. Cass Fatty Alofa. Oh, he just asked, is it a podcast? Novella Cruz, our homie, says no one should use Hollywood as a guideline. It celebrates and antagonizes decline or morality. Evan, a friend that I've met through the podcast and through Center for Biblical Unity, just said, I just watched Conclave at a church movie night last night. And although Hollywood did not provide a template for Christian worldview, what these movies still allow us to do today is to reflect on the world and where it is in its thinking. We can then reflect and not accept, but identify and point out where it where it parts company with a Christian worldview. So that's with the discernment piece, right? And he wrote a whole long thing. I'm just not going to read. Um, our friend Jacob said Paul used cultural things to understand people and how to share the gospel effectively. I sort of corrected that and said that Paul used cultural things to communicate the gospel. He didn't use culture to understand the gospel. But yeah, I'll leave it as that. No, I'm going to read this one too. My circle of friends includes both sides of the. My circle of friends includes both sides of the racial spectrum. Um, so there's only two sides of the racial spectrum. But a vast number of my white friends and colleagues who have seen Sinners were impacted in a positive way. Regarding your thoughts about whether film entertainment negates or exaggerates life, I would contend that it more often than not authentic and addresses reality better than many of our other social influences. Really. So it's speaking of spectrum, there's a spectrum of responses in this post here. I would say
Yeah.
the majority of people feel that it would be detrimental to use Hollywood as
Mhm.
such a read or a standard, to use film and arts and entertainment. And then some people say actually it would be good. Um, I think that it would be overwhelmingly detrimental, but I'm not here to give you my reason on that. I'm here to show you how it's been detrimental. That's what we're here to do. That's what we're highlighting. Um, there is an article. This article is from historyglow.net, and it's from an article titled "The Effect of Entertainment: Shaping Minds, Emotions, and Society." It comes from 2023. It says this: one of the most potent effects of entertainment is its ability to evoke emotions and create empathy. Engaging with entertaining content triggers emotional responses ranging from laughter and joy to fear, sadness, and empathy for characters' struggles. Um, I think all the stuff that was happening in LA,
Mhm.
all the stuff that's been happening in LA, I think I know is a result of whatever history.net just said taking root in a lot of people's hearts and minds over time.
Yeah.
Remember our boy Juicy Smollett?
Juicy Smolier. Yeah.
Why on earth would he ever be so audacious to do such a thing? Why?
I believe he was made to do it, but
Yeah. Why?
yeah, I
Why?
know.
Why?
Well, because it affects public opinion. Obviously,
Correct.
it's to create racism.
Right.
Got to create it where it's not. Could create civil unrest where it's not.
Yeah. And although Juicy Smollet's plan failed and he was made a laughing stock, what he failed to do, Hollywood has been doing for decades.
Mm-hmm.
For decades. Through arts and entertainment. There's another article. This is from Forbes.com in 2019, and the article was called Mindset Matters: The Influence of Entertainment and the Significance of Culture Change in a Business of a New Decade. Here's a quote: there has been no greater disseminator of culture in the history of humankind than that of the entertainment industry. From the media business that includes film, television, advertising to video games, the industry has provided the mode to not only define trends, shape culture, but influence our identities in the most profound ways. It is because of this very influence that the industry itself must be very cognizant of both the power it wields and the value it holds on the everyday lives of people and society.
Hmm.
That's Forbes magazine doing more than many American churches won't do. I'm going to read that last part. It is because of this very influence that the industry itself must be very cognizant of both the power it wields and the value it holds on the everyday lives of people in society. I believe that the industry is very well aware of the power
Yeah.
it holds.
Yeah.
Very well aware. And I believe our real world examples, I think that we've seen more prevalently are in these categories: ethnic divisions, homosexuality, and Christianity.
Hmm.
The industry is very well aware on the power it wields in how to influence people's thinking regarding ethnic divisions. I'll just say sexual immorality or sexuality and Christianity. You remember, I want to say this is probably the first clip I saw of Ben Shapiro. Um, I don't know what it was, but let me just play it. But the context was him being asked a question about um, why the disparity exists between Black Americans and white Americans. And Ben Shapiro answered the question, well, that's because the influence of culture has permeated Black Americans far greater than other cultures.
Hmm.
Do you remember that clip? I'm going to play it.
No.
Okay, here it is.
How can you argue that racism is not a driving factor in income inequality?
Because it has nothing to do with race and everything to do with culture. And when you have a culture that doesn't, and when, you know what? Explain to me. You explain to me why black kids aren't graduating high school. Explain that one to me. Explain to me why black kids are shooting each other in rates significantly higher than whites are shooting each other. Explain to me why 13% of the population is responsible for 50% of the murder. Explain to me why the number of black kids in prison, not for innocent reasons, not for walking down the street and getting pulled into a prison, is so high. Explain, if it has nothing to do with culture, explain to me why the single motherhood rate in the black community jumped from 20% to 70% in the same course of time that the civil rights movement has made such tremendous strides. Is America more racist now than it was in 1960? And if it is, please explain to me how that happened.
I think the kids call that a mic drop.
Hmm. I do remember that now that I see it.
Yeah. You know what's really sad about that? Is that in a very serious question,
Yeah. The smug reaction of the black
correct.
people who it affects.
I mean, it's a very serious question. And even if you disagree with his answer, it's a serious conversation.
Yeah.
And their rebuttal is to throw their hands up and laugh. Oh, here he go again. Yeah.
Hmm.
What?
You started with some, yeah, that's
Yeah,
that
yeah,
whole,
yeah, 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 yeah. But he's on to something
yeah.
because the numbers that he gave, people cannot like his tone. People cannot like the way he talks. People cannot like the words per second he speaks, which is quite fast. But what he addressed is indisputable. And what you're seeing in society amongst Black Americans, as we focus on Black Americans, this doesn't just happen to Black Americans, but we're going to focus on that. What you're seeing in society amongst Black Americans are the fruits of their response to Hollywood's discipleship.
Yeah.
That's what you're seeing. You watch the BET Awards?
Yeah, I watched, snippets of it. I didn't watch it when it was on, but I watched enough of it to understand that it was church, it was the club, it was 106 in Park, and wokety woke.
Mm. Was there anything hinting at ethnic divide in the BET Award?
Ethnic divide. Yeah, Tyler Perry gave some weird sermon or something. I don't know what he's doing.
They are removing our books from libraries. They are removing our stories and our history. They are removing our names from government buildings. It's as if someone wants to erase our footprints. Because what we need to understand is that if our children don't know our history, they won't know our power.
But he gets up and talks about how black people have to obviously were snatched from their homes in Africa, and our footprints are on water. That's why they can't squash our dreams. Or some, word mess, that initially would get people to go, ooh, but it really said nothing. The billionaire film director or millionaire film director is trying to relate to the average black person in poverty, which isn't the average black person. I mean, the average black person in poverty. The average black person is not in poverty, but that's what they would want you to believe. All those black people, successful people in the BET Awards, want to convince us that we are underprivileged, that white people are overprivileged, and it's their fault that we're underprivileged. Because they snatched us from Africa. Snatched us from Africa where we were happy. We were happy there. They snatched us up, brought us over here, and taught us that Christian mess. And now we're worse off. That Christian, that Bible that teaches us to murder each other. That's what they gave us. And that's why we do it.
All that gets packaged in those things. I to be honest with you, I can't tell you the last time I watched an award show. But what about sexual licentiousness and immorality? Was any of that?
There's always crude jokes, and and it's odd because it'd be right after Don McClurkin just said, "And you can stand," and then Kevin Hart, who hosts the show, gets up and makes a joke about somebody's sexual something. And so it's like it's this blackness like wrapped up in a ball, and it doesn't matter which section of it you decide to address at any moment, it's all acceptable.
Right.
There's not going to be one Christian there that gets whoa. We just sang about XYZ. And you just made a joke about this. Nope. Maverick City, they all there, laughing it up.
Yeah.
So it's they don't know that the BET Awards is given to them by the puppet masters to help condone what it is they're doing at the BET Awards. To help, they don't know that they are further creating the divide with the BET Awards. As the black people think in their minds, BET's for us, not the whites. And the MTV Awards, that's
further propagates the divide. Like we're gonna have our own channel, y'all, because the world is oppressive. So we're gonna be the ones to train you to cheat on your spouses and to sleep with each other and with impunity and to neglect fatherhood and motherhood. We're gonna be the ones to train you how to do that.
Us past Tyler Perry's, us all his movies genre. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
So it's influential in training people how to think about ethnic divisions, homosexuality or sexual immorality, and Christianity.
Yeah.
And it happens probably simultaneously. 2-3 birds with one stone, really, like you just said, is like while somebody's on stage twerking and then winning an award saying, "I want to thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ," they're training you in what to think about sexual immorality and Christianity at the same time.
Yeah. Glorilla performed with Maverick City, I believe, some gospel song she did.
Yeah. What is a gospel song?
Don't know.
So, in addition to that, I do think, and we've addressed this, and I think a lot of people have addressed this, that it's still still staying in the context of Black Americans. Black Americans are traditionally conservative. I'm not talking ballots. I'm talking lifestyle,
right?
yeah, lifestyle is traditionally conservative, even with the falling away of fathers in homes over the
Mhm.
past couple decades. Lifestyle has still been very conservative. You'll honor your parents. Um, you will obey authority, right? You
Mhm.
will engage in marriages between men and women. That has been the case. Um, so much so that even up until recently, it was taboo to just come out waving some flag saying, "This is the way I live, y'all." That
Right.
was taboo. People were afraid to do that. I'm just addressing the way it was. People's fear of doing that was a response to the fact that it's an overwhelmingly conservative culture. And that is something that has been deeply under attack.
Yeah. And the BET Awards helps facilitate that.
The BT Awards
Yeah.
helps facilitate that.
And it's like, how can we get to the black people? Just them. You know what I
Right.
mean? That's it.
Right.
You can attack their faith all in one little show
Yep.
and go, oh, nostalgia. Oh, was that Ray J? Oh, dang, Neo performed. And
You,
then Israel Houghton gets up and sings a gospel song, and then we all good.
yeah, it's like, what's happening here? What's happening here? People are familiar with this phrase, the Overton window. Now, the Overton window is typically a political concept, and it describes a range of ideas or policies that are considered acceptable in that realm of politics. But I'm taking it out of the political context and I'm just putting it in society because there is a societal Overton window. And that Overton window decides what's acceptable. And Hollywood is who moves that window for us.
Right.
Once upon a time, married couples, when they were shown in their bedrooms, they slept in separate beds.
Yeah.
They slept in separate beds.
I Dream of Jeannie, I Love Lucy.
Yeah. Now, the Overton window has pushed us to now that would seem ludicrous.
Yeah.
People would think that that's ridiculous. As a matter of fact, people would think that it's ridiculous to never see somebody kiss. Not only that, we're past separate beds and kissing. We are now at full-blown pornography in film and in television.
Right. Yeah.
I told you that someone asked me about a series called The Watchmen. And it was based off of a movie, The Watchmen. Yeah, it's after. So the movie exists, and that came out probably 10 years ago or something like that. Maybe
it came out a long time ago.
And the series stems from that, and in good Hollywood fashion, it keeps the cycle. It makes sure that it influences our thinking on the ethnic divide, on sexual licentiousness, and Christianity. But this was very. I really I was angry in watching it, and I was angry in the same way that of watching like Moonlight. Now, mind you, I don't have desires to watch these things. I know that these things exist. I knew that Moonlight existed. I knew that Watchmen existed. I didn't watch them. What makes me end up watching those things is when people bring questions to me and say, "Man, there was something in this that I want you to weigh in on," and then I'm like, "Well, let me watch it." And with me going in there blind, I don't know what I'm actually going in for. Now, as a cinephile, you have to be very good at being able to have discipline. When you see explicit things happening, you need to know how to fast forward past it.
Yeah.
You need to know how to fast forward past it. Now, something is interesting there because a lot of film and TV, they put dialogue during those things now.
Yeah.
You got a murder mystery and they out here revealing who the killer is while they having a daggone pornographic session. Just so that you can want to watch it. But you got to have discipline. So when those things pop up, it catches me off guard. Moonlight was very explicit, but I'm talking about Watchmen in the same way. Watchmen has superheroes, not only superheroes, has a men who are superheroes, not only men, a black man who is a superhero, and not only is a black man who's a superhero, he's a black man who's a superhero who is in a homosexual relationship with another man, white man, who's a superhero.
Hmm.
And not only do they have that in Watchmen, it is the most explicit things have been in film regarding sex scenes and men like that.
Hmm.
Showing sodomy like that. And the only reason that would be there is to follow the steps that were laid out by our friends that we addressed on this podcast. Let me make sure I can find them. Yeah, Harvard's Marshall Kirk and Hunter Madsen. Those Harvard professors of propaganda and psychology, or I would say marketing and psychology. And they laid out their plan on how to normalize homosexuality in America. When we talk about these things, people can be upset that we talk about them. But at the end of the day, I'm just telling you what's true. That there was an actual plan to make sure that you find things acceptable more and more and more and more to influence you, that will ultimately end up influencing your life, the life of your children, then the life of society. That plan to normalize this in America was 3 steps: desensitization, jamming, and conversion. The desensitization is so that you can just see it. You just have to see it. If you're watching Real World, you're watching Survivor, when those things come out in the beginning, you got to make sure that there's someone who calls themselves a homosexual on that show. It doesn't have, we don't have to dive into it. They don't have to talk about how, when they started living that way, whatever, just hear it so that you can become desensitized to it. What will also happen is you need to have people who disagree with this lifestyle. They need to be pit up against, or they need to be juxtaposed with people we all agree are disgusting. Nazis, KKK, fascists, whatever it is. And in film, Darren, who are some of the most disgusting people that film highlights?
That film's highlight?
Yeah.
Usually racists.
Right. Now, if it's not a racist, matter of fact, let me ask you this. You watched The Last of Us, right?
Right.
Who are the most disgusting people when it comes down to villains on The Last of Us?
Some of the most disgusting people, they were
First season.
there was, what's that? Oh, first season. Oh, there was like a cannibal Christian organization who was also raped women. Yeah, they were terrible. I mean, I don't even know how they're Christian.
Yeah,
they just told us they were Christian.
Christians. If you have Christians in a context in film, and it's not a Christian movie, they're going to be the most disgusting people. Handmaid's Tale, Last of Us, I Now Pronounce You Chuck and Larry, The West Wing, whatever it is, they're going to be the worst type of person. That's jamming.
Yeah. And what's the other show? Did you watch the show? What's the Michigan show? Ozark.
Oh, yeah. Ozark. That's right. Yeah. They're going to be the most disgusting people. And then you have conversion of what you're seeing now, that where because you've been desensitized to it and because you don't want to be compared to the most despicable people on earth, you better not say anything when we have story time. You better not say anything when we put it into the curriculum. And not only that, your children are going to leave you because you are a bigot parent. Your children are going to despise you and hate you. All I'm saying is that this is laid out and documented. It's documented. It will be in our show notes of this episode. The file will be in our show notes. It's in an article called After the Ball. And there's a host of other information in there as well. It's direct influence, and it's intentional. It's intentional influence. And people have to pick something. When you have these Black Americans in this country, which I'm not saying that the Harvard's thing was towards Black Americans. That's towards America.
Yeah.
That's everyone. But I'm saying this episode is honing in on Black America for a reason. When you have Black Americans saying, "Oh no, we don't trust the government because the government doing this," and they try, what did Tyler Perry say? They stealing our books. They're doing this stuff.
Yeah.
Well, Tyler, if you can take a deep breath, and when you come up for air after espousing that nonsense, you know what else is happening? They are doing, whoever you think they are, there is another they who is actually emasculating men. You're one of them.
Right.
There's another they who's actually dehumanizing women. You're one of them. There's another they who's actually destroying motherhood. You're one of them. They. There's a bigger they. And the Christian knows that the ultimate they isn't human. It's not a human. The war isn't against humanity. That's why humans are trying to warn other humans and saying that there's a sickness we suffer from as humans. You can't deny that there's a sickness we suffer from, but guess what? Hollywood's going to tell you there's a sickness too. And all you need to do is just ask the ancestors for help. We're not quite there yet.
Blame the disease on white people.
Right. Yeah, that's right. That's the sickness, white people. What we're seeing a lot of in theaters today is it's the theories of puppet masters in practice. That's what it is. When we're looking out in the world today and we see riots and we see licentiousness, we see licentious lifestyle choices, we see flaunting abortions, we see people flaunting immorality, we see family divisiveness, all of that stuff. We're seeing the theories of these puppet masters carried out in praxis. That's what it is. That's what Ben Shapiro was addressing.
Yeah, and a lot of these men and women that helped to create and infiltrate schools. I mean, you mentioned Harvard, right? Harvard wasn't always a school that would produce these kinds of studies. But you got people like that who are so willing to see a plan like this go through. I mean, they won't even, most of them will die before some of these things come into fruition, but it's something that they believed in.
Yeah.
Something bigger than just a plan, right? It just wasn't just an idea to them.
Right.
A lot of them.
You know, I think about just how proliferated this is.
Yeah.
Hollywood's tentacles on our minds and things that both you and I like too. Things that we like. I mean, I didn't know that this existed. I think I just found out this year that there was a musical of Matilda and then a Netflix adaptation of that musical of Matilda. I loved Matilda when we were kids.
Yeah.
We haven't seen that little girl anywhere, really, have we?
Yeah.
Good for her.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a musical and there's a clip I think that was going viral because of these girls were rocking off in the hallway. And so what's happening here is the kids are revolting. This song that they're singing is actually called Revolting or something like that. Revolting Children. That's what it's called. Revolting Children. It's written by Tim Minchin, who's an atheist, an empiricist. You can just listen to his worldviews and you'll see that it's coming out in the things that he writes. I think that's what anybody would do. The question isn't whether or not people's worldview comes out in their art. The question is their worldview true?
Right.
That's always the question. There are people who don't want to do the thinking and they don't want to actually dive into the conversation. So they'll say all worldviews are true. And then I'll say, not yours.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll disagree with me. But my worldview is that your worldview isn't true. And you just said all worldviews are true. But you have these songs, this film is actually training children to revolt. You have this song called Revolting Children. You have another song called Naughty. They're catchy songs. And you just watch them shake off in that hallway like that.
Mm-hmm.
Are they crazy? The way that they get that, the way that they shaking a foot in this thing. Look at them. Who taught them this? What is their problem? Good in the world. And so it captivates you. Meanwhile, what's happening underneath of the captivation is there's a message being given to you.
Mm-hmm.
If you could kind of look through this scene right here and start seeing Mexican flags, Palestine flags, rainbow flags, as they tear the streets of LA apart, you see the discipleship that's happening. You see it. I'm not saying it's a one-to-one. I'm just helping people to piece the realities that we're in. I'm not saying that people watched Matilda and that's why they're rioting in LA.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. However, there are people who are willing to riot while still being uninformed.
Yeah.
Why? What was that movie? Or not? No, the show, Darren. What was that dark show on Netflix?
13 Reasons Why?
Yeah, 13 Reasons Why.
Yeah.
I don't even know if a lot of people know about that, but that was geared towards teens and young adults.
Yeah.
I had students in student ministry that I was pastoring from middle school to high school, and all of them had heard about this show and were watching this show. This is a dark, dark show.
Yeah. I couldn't even get through it.
So what did you looked into Edward Bernays? Explain to the people who Edward Bernays is.
Edward Bernays was, well, I mean, he was born in Austria, but he was known as like a father of public relations. I think that's something that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, the title.
And that's what it was. It's kind of like a nickname. Basically, he coined the name by being able to come up with ways to get people through marketing to behave a certain way. So if you want, for example, if he wanted to increase tobacco sales for women during a Easter parade in New York City, he had like some women on floats smoking a specific tobacco. It was cigarettes back then, but they were smoking tobacco. That year, tobacco sales for women spiked. And so the message in the tobacco smoking was liberation, freedom, because for a long time, women smoking was frowned upon. It was deemed as unladylike. So now you have a bunch of women smoking tobacco on a parade. Everyone sees it. And so now tobacco sales go up. Another example is bacon and eggs. This idea that bacon and eggs, the all-American breakfast, is something that is it's pretty standard. Like
if there was ever a W that the villains got with me, man, that's it. That's the one.
But he basically promoted that idea that bacon and eggs was the all-American breakfast. Once again, restaurants who sold bacon and eggs together, sales skyrocket. So he basically basically able through psychology to get people to do whatever, buy whatever, through promoting and marketing, through advertising, propaganda, and more as a more modern thought process. Yeah, his name is Mark Randolph. He's the co-founder and the first CEO of Netflix. And Mark Randolph was Edward Bernays' great uncle on his father's side. Now, just based on what we've been talking about, the influence of propaganda, marketing, advertising. Here's a guy who has been able to get people to act, to buy, to move any way he wants them to move through psychology. And now Mark Randolph, who is a descendant of Edward Bernays, which is a theme. All these men and women have descendants that are alive today still. Mark Randolph, who is a descendant of Edward Bernays, now introduces Netflix, which is one of the largest streaming companies in the world, which goes back to messaging. So,
bro, check this out. One of Randolph's paternal great-granduncles was psychoanalysis pioneer Sigmund Freud. That's wild. I don't know if people know about Sigmund Freud, but this is not the episode to dive into.
all right, that's Edward Bernays' uncle. Yeah.
Sigmund Freud, the psychology kind of, what's it called? Industry. I'm sorry for psychologists who are listening to this, but the psychology industry is built on a lot of dark stuff and lies. And if you read, I'm going to try to find that and include that in our notes. I didn't know that Edward Bernays was related to Sigmund Freud.
Yeah.
But basically gaslighting.
Yeah.
That's Sigmund's baby.
Yeah.
That's Sigmund's baby.
Edward Bernays was also responsible for convincing people that fluoride in the water was a good thing.
Interesting. So that's important because you have somebody who knows the influence of certain things, weaponizes it, and then you have family members who of this person who, obviously before him weaponized it in a more direct way, psychoanalyzing people. And then you have family members after him who I don't know them personally. It's speculative to say, but I would say utilize at best, weaponize at worst, it in its I guess more classic way through media and entertainment on Netflix. And the things that we see on Netflix.
Yeah.
Quite interesting. Any people listening right here binge watch things on Netflix? You learn the most when you think you're being entertained. You learn the most when you think you're being entertained.
Think of the shows that we talked about. Like, remember Cuties?
Oh yeah. Wow.
Like the kind of dark shows that are on Netflix. And it's almost like I think that one they went too far with the what's the stage? Not jam. That's not jamming. What's the next stage?
With Cuties?
Yeah.
Conversion?
Right. Yeah, they went a step too far. I think a lot of people were like, whoa.
Yeah.
What is this? Ended up taking it down.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, you see it. One of the main things you mentioned early was ethnic divide.
Yeah.
For example, and all of these things are to cause division, by the way.
Right.
Division and ultimately to get people to turn away from what's true. Christ.
Correct.
There's always these heated discussions about these Disney movies where there's clearly in the cartoon a white protagonist, and then Disney does a live action and make them black.
Yeah.
All right. That right there, is it a big deal? No. But those of us who know that there's a point, the point is division. The point is to cause dismay, to cause disarray, to cause people to hate one another.
Right.
That's the point.
Right.
That's the point.
That's always the point. Why are we addressing all of this? I think now we've gotten to the crux. You just said it, Darren. It's like the ethnic divide, sexual licentiousness, even people being influenced on how they ought to view Christianity. It's ultimately to sway their thoughts on how to think about Christ, to take them away from life, to take them away from flourishing, and to choose death in that which destroys.
Right.
Not only choose it, defend it. Not only defend it, be willing to kill for it. That's what we're seeing. And it's coming through your favorite songs, your favorite TV shows, and your favorite movies. If there was a movie that could probably have red flags regarding it, including one or more of the things that we've addressed today, it would probably be a movie called Sinners.
That's just bold, right? That's just in your face. But I would say another component of that is getting people to inform their thoughts, is to use likable people, right? Likable people.
Yeah.
Use people that they know.
Yeah.
Have grown to love through television. And that's something that we saw during the election cycle.
Yeah.
Oprah interviews Kamala Harris and is just surrounded by celebrities. That's why they do that. Why does Kamala Harris bring Beyonce, Meg Thee Stallion, and Cardi B on stage?
Right.
Because they're using people to sway your opinion. Just their presence. Why does Kamala Harris do a cringe little video with Taraji P. Henson? To sway your opinion.
It was cringe.
So you have people like Julia Roberts, Ben Stiller, whoever, Will Ferrell, and it could just be commercials.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's not even always movies or TV shows because people aren't watching them anymore. They put them in commercials, and just or Jimmy Kimmel. Jimmy Kimmel interviews Ryan Coogler, and so now you're tuning in and you're watching these guys. Or Saturday Night Live is a big one. Comedy is a great way to spread lies through people's favorite actors and actresses.
Right.
But yeah, go on. Sinners.
There are multiple angles to address this, and I want to try to find something that I sent to you. You remember that clip I sent to you of
chair's rough.
It was from a podcast, and the podcast was a author or blogger who was talking about worship.
Yeah, the black worship and white worship.
Right. The overwhelming, I guess, resounding sentiment behind Sinners that I was hearing was ethnic pride.
Yeah.
People being proud of their blackness, and the dissenting view was Christians saying this is an anti-Christian movie.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I don't actually know why. I can get why Christians do what we're doing right now, trying to warn people, say, hey, you need to awake, oh sleeper. But as far as getting upset, I don't get that.
I was just thinking that people have so much like the expectation for Hollywood to do something moral exists for some reason with people.
That's literally the basis of my Facebook question.
And even I would even say a movie like Sinners is dangerous to the young believer, the non-believer, but for the mature believer, it's laughable. I think I told you this, because people are saying, won't watch Sinners, it's dangerous. Now I get the spiritual aspects of it, but those of us who are in Christ and are sure in our faith, watch that movie and the discernment takes over.
Yeah.
You probably can't get through it without going, what?
Yeah.
What are you kidding me? It's
Correct.
very obvious what they were doing in the movie to confuse, to turn people away from Christ. I mean, it's obvious.
Right.
And anyone who loved the movie without any sort of pause probably isn't in Christ.
Yeah. So I think that, look, people, like I said on my Facebook post, people who know us aren't going to be shocked that this is our take. I welcome dissenting views. This is what I don't welcome: temper tantrums. I don't welcome it. As a matter of fact, if you've ever thrown temper tantrums to me, I've probably told you explicitly, miss me. Don't throw a temper tantrum at me. Don't send me no messages with temper tantrums in it. I'm going to ignore it. Give me an argument. That's what I want. Give me an argument. But I want to look at some articles that came from this movie. And what I want to do in reading some of these articles is I want to see what other people are taking from this movie.
Yeah.
I want to see what is happening when the person watches the movie and they go out and live.
Yeah.
What is this movie doing? So let's start with one. Oh wait. I clicked the same article. Let me see.
It's not something we haven't seen before, too. Like it's the same.
No. It's from Dust
Ryan Coogler from Dust Till Dawn, and then now you got Jordan Peele doing the same themes in his movies.
Yeah.
White man bad, black man good.
Right. We're used to it. So let's see this. Here's an article from the Tennessean. This is an op-ed. So this article does not address the opinions of the Tennessean. They want to make sure we know that. Here's the title. Ryan Coogler film Sinners explores Black Americans' complex ties to the church. So get it. You're supposed to be influenced on how to think about the church, y'all. Here's the subtext. Hoodoo is a mystery to many because it had to be. Although many attempted to destroy it, somehow it persevered. Now, without reading any aspect of the article, we are praising, at least that's what I'm inferring from this, hoodoo. I'm not going to listen to this article, this thing here, but I'm just going to read some aspects of it. Ryan Coogler's new horror movie, Sinners, focuses on a variety of issues, including ethnicity, Southern culture, and the importance of protecting your art. But one of the most interesting topics the movie highlights is oppression and colonization through a lens of religion. So, Darren, we're already at 67%. 67% of our list. Ethnic divide, sexual licentiousness, and Christianity. So we don't have sexual licentiousness in this, but we got 2 of the 3. When Coogler first announced his 5th feature film, I was ecstatic. I don't really care. Let me see. I was already excited to see a vampire movie focusing on Black characters in the South. But what shocked me was the subplot of the complicated relationship between African Americans and Christianity. And what's always so fascinating to me, this is Brandon talking now.
Have they seen that movie?
Talk about Christianity is they talk about it like a person.
Yeah.
They talk about it like a person. So in the same way, somebody could talk about marriage. You know, there's a complicated relationship between Black Americans and marriage after slavery.
Mm-hmm.
During the era of the civil rights movement and then post-civil rights movement, there's a complicated relationship between Black Americans and marriage. Because marriage has just been beaten up on Black Americans, man.
Mm-hmm.
I digress. Let's keep going. She quotes this person, the author. I'm sorry, I didn't give her name. Gabrielle Chenault. She quotes the movie. So the movie has made an impression on her. This is a quote from the movie. Religion, but not the blues, was forced upon black people. Now, I don't think that's the exact quote from the movie. I think it was a little bit more explicit that it was Christianity, not religion.
Yeah.
Because hoodoo is religion.
Right.
The author continues and says, growing up in a Baptist community in New York City, Sunday school, choir practice, and lengthy Sunday services were part of my regular routine. While I enjoyed it thoroughly as a child, as I got older, it felt more like a chore. As I started my journey into history, and specifically my ancestors' journey in the United States, I'm going to read that again. As I started my journey into history, and specifically my ancestors' journey in the United States, I was confused on why my family was content with practicing a religion that was forced on us. As Delroy Lindo's character Delta Slim says in Sinners, blues wasn't forced on us like that religion. We brought this from home. So I'm not going to read through this whole article. I just want people to get a taste of the sentiments that people have post watching Sinners. You can agree with it. You can disagree with it. I'm just saying that obviously Sinners wants you to think in this spectrum of things in light of this. Let's go to another. Oh, wait. There is another quick quote.
What does that look like?
What does what look like?
To have a religion forced on you.
Nobody knows. It says this: Sinners demystifies hoodoo and challenges the witchcraft narrative. You see our Overton window moving? You see it moving? Can you feel it? Listeners, can you feel the Overton window moving? How this movie and now this article is kind of jamming you to be a negative person if you view hoodoo as witchcraft. You ought to accept it. Even if you don't accept it, you ought to accept your black brothers and sisters who practice it. You see what's happening? Let's keep going. Here's another article. This article, it goes a different route after watching Sinners. This is probably one of my favorite articles here. How white charismatic worship stole from the black church. So which one is it, Darren? Is this religion forced upon black people and they need to set themselves free? Or do they own it? And it's been stolen from them.
I'm trying to figure out where that was in the movie.
Oh, listen to the twist. For those who haven't seen the movie Sinners, if you're listening, the meta narrative is that obviously vampires exist, and if you have been alive since 2020 up until now, you can probably guess that in an all-black movie, the vampires are the white people, and they turn black people into vampires. That's the only way blac people can become vampires.
They're also in the KKK.
They're also the KKK. So they're vampires and the KKK. All the bad things. They got raisins in their potato salad. Like, it's all that stuff. All that stuff. And so since they're vampires, this author, David Gate, who's a white, I think Australian, or maybe he's British, but I mean, if you're Australian, you're British. But this is the subtext. The vampires who steal stories and songs and culture. Ryan Coogler's, he says, quote, Ryan Coogler's latest is an event, a genre-shattering Southern Gothic vampire musical set in 1932 Mississippi. It says the whole film thrums with the sorrowful, enraged knowledge of black creation and white theft. Watching it, I couldn't help but reflect on my own history in the white charismatic worship movement, a history steeped in the spiritual music we had taken without ever paying the full price. Sinners lays it bare. We were the vampires. Imagine a worship service. The lights are dim except for a solitary blue spotlight cutting dramatically across the smoke machine haze. A bearded young man wearing tight jeans and the facial expression of a troubled minor prophet kicks a reverb-heavy G chord. An attractive woman with perfectly truffled hair lifts her hands heavenward. You can feel God in the room. The year is not 1972, 1985, or 97, although it could be. It's just now, an eternal now of white charismatic worship. What's very interesting about these articles, both the Tennessean and this one, is that they reference Christianity, they reference church. One even references worship. I think the Tennessean might reference worship. And the one thing they have in common with the book that I'm currently reading by Henry Louis Gates about the Black church is they're all Jesusless. What is Christianity without Jesus? Christianity without Jesus is called humans living.
Right.
That's what it's called. That's what it's called. And I think people fail to see that and understand that. What was the scene, Darren? You said your favorite scene from the movie Center?
Yeah, I think as far as cinematography goes, there's that one shot thing that Ryan Coogler does. And it was like this going through different genres of music, different cultures of music, but all Black culture.
Yeah.
And that was like it was hard to. I wish it wasn't like all lies.
Yeah.
Because I did appreciate the cinematography of it.
Right.
But I couldn't ignore just the lies and the clear psychology of it all.
Correct.
They're trying to teach us that hip hop, blues, Africans in some country doing some weird dance are all a part of Black culture. That's all Black American culture. I mean, because here they are in Mississippi, and somehow you can trace that back to witchcraft, which should be the true religion, apparently.
Yeah, right.
And also trace it to the future in hip hop, and all that's because of Black people, which I just thought was disingenuous and poor history study. I mean, just poor history. Just study history a little better.
Right. We're looking for headlines, and I think that's what really gets people off astray. I think the main thing that leads people astray is they want to be they don't want there to be a God who is righteous and holy. But what's so ironic is that when you press further into this righteous and holy God, you realize how unrighteous and unholy you are. And then you realize exactly what it means that he made it possible for you to become righteous. That's the history of this world that people call Christianity. That's been known as Christianity, but it's not just some title to add to a host of different religions practiced by humankind. It is a claim to truth, the objective truth. And what I'm saying is, rather than people adding other things into the pot and saying, but hoodoo, but voodoo, but Santa Maria, whatever it is, or Santeria, all of these things, why don't you make a claim for the truth? That's all I want. I'm not interested in hearing what you'd rather do. I want a claim for the truth. My claim for the truth is that the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. And the Lord has revealed himself in the visible image of Jesus Christ. That in accordance with the scriptures, he was born of a virgin, lived, died, and rose again from the dead and will return again. And he's going to judge humanity. That's the truth claim. It's falsifiable. I always say, read one more quote from this thing, and then we're going to get to why people should care about, I think, the, what's it called? The man, I can't think right now. Whatever the feedback of sinners is, people should care about the feedback and what's happening in these articles where people are talking about black worship. What is worship? Different than. He says this. Let's be very clear up front. White charismatic worship, by which I mean the vast, tangled, contradictory phenomenon of emotionally performative, musically semi-competent, quote unquote, come as you are evangelical rock, owes its very soul to the black church. I mean, what type of simping nonsense is this?
Yeah, it comes off really lame. You know what I mean? Coming from a non-American, like buying into this black white thing. That's not true in other countries.
Right.
It's so disingenuous. That's not his life.
That's not your life, bro.
Like you know, they don't do that in other countries. That's something here. Right, been used to plague Americans, and now you're buying into it.
Yeah,
that's not real.
Buying
Buying into the only two ethnicities thing. That's insane.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, you know, it's really disheartening that this is the case. But this is the fallout from the film. The question is, did the film intend this? Mm-hmm. What was trying to be painted? We saw interviews with actors talking about how they practice these religions. What did Michael B. Jordan say? Babaladoi or something like that?
He's a babalau.
Babalau?
Yeah.
My question is, I don't care whether or not you practice it. Is it true?
Right.
Is it true? That's the question. That scene you're talking about, Darren, is a scene where they're going, you know, they're showing, because the statement was this, that when you play music, I'm paraphrasing, but you awaken the ancestors, and you awaken descendants of the future, right? So this movie takes place in the 30s. And while he's playing his guitar and singing the blues, the film shows a scene where we're seeing the people dance at this juke joint, but then all of a sudden you start seeing kind of like old African warrior dances that are taking place from people. And then you see stuff that would also be happening at a BET show. You got twerking going on. You got stepping going on from like fraternities, sororities. And like you said, the sentiment behind it, it's a cool one. It's a cool, powerful sentiment of like, yeah, look at the way rhythm and dance has spanned different cultures. But per the movie, the same peoples, which, you know, it's not, it's different peoples, but it's a cool one. There's a darker reality to that. It's a far darker reality. I don't know if people remember I was about to say 1921. In 2021, Travis Scott had his big festival. I think it would have been his second one. His second one called Astro World. And in Astro World, at this Astro World festival, the news was viral. It went the festival, in the fallout of the festival went viral because of the fact that over 300 people were injured and 8 people died. Now, there's a documentary about this on Netflix, but it's a documentary on Netflix. It's not going to dig into the depths of what we're about to dig into here because it's Netflix. It does touch on the fact that Live Nation was very aware of the potential, just the precarious nature of maintaining the festival. because of the fact that people were jumping over the gates, rushing through the doors. People weren't paying tickets. They flooded into the place. And the setup was meant for people to enter in a specific way. If they didn't enter in a specific way,
It was over capacity too.
yeah, way over capacity, and people were asphyxiated to death. Now, what's interesting is this. Though that is the case, in real time in 2021, when people made it home from that festival and they uploaded their testimonials on TikTok, there was just one resounding common denominator. They all said, I felt like I was in hell. And they were all very clear not to just merely use it as a figure of speech. They all talked about the fact that they felt a darkness there. They all talked about that. These are all separate testimonies of people uploading videos on TikTok after that festival. Now, when I watched the documentary on Netflix as somebody who hadn't known anything about the festival, all I knew about was the news in 2021 about the people dying and things like that. I didn't know anything about it. And so this was my fresh eyes looking at this documentary on Netflix. And within the first few seconds of seeing the festival set up, I said, wait, what?
Yeah.
The stage was a mountain. The extension part of the stage where Travis Scott could walk out on into the crowd, kind of, was an upside down cross. At the foot of this mountain that was on stage was like a portal type of opening thing. And inside it, before the show started, it said, "See you on the other side." And as the show is going on, there's a phoenix kind of rising and flapping its wings and stuff like that, while fire is pouring down from the mountain and over top of this portal. Now, this is not something that I looked into. This is just my prior knowledge catching up to what I was seeing at this concert. Because if you can visualize the upside down cross, imagine that you can only see the upside down cross if you're in a helicopter looking down on the crowd. So Travis Scott has a stage, and then you know how you have like different platforms. You can walk out further into the crowd. It divides the crowd. The thing that divides the crowd is an upside down cross. Now that setup was meant for people to enter at the foot. I'm just going to call it a cross for sake of conversation. The purpose was for people to enter at the foot of the cross and then disperse on both sides and then fill the stage that way, where it could be equal filled on both sides. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But what happened was, if we're facing Travis Scott's stage, to the left of that stage was another stage where what's her name? Black Panther song with Kendrick Lamar. On the stars,
Her name.
whoever she is. She performed last before Travis Scott. And what happened is, as her show was ending, people knew that Travis Scott's show was about to begin. So instead of people trickling in from kind of the open space and from the foot of the cross and kind of dispersing around Travis Scott's stage, all 50 some odd thousand people left from, I keep wanting to say Kesha, but what is her name? All those people left from her stage at once and entered from the left side towards Travis Scott's stage. And there's a barrier there. So people are entering like this. They're entering like this. This is the barrier. They're entering here. And so more people are funneling in this way. So the first people who entered this way are trapped. They're stuck. They're not going anywhere. And people ended up dying. Now, that's the kind of naturalistic, logistical nightmare that it was. But there was just a deep panic of a lot of people. When you watch the documentary, people are recording during that time. And people are like, you can see people panicking in real time.
Hmm.
And so my prior knowledge,
It's not SZA, is it?
SZA, that's what it is.
Yeah.
SZA. My prior knowledge was telling me this. Why would there be a mountain? I asked Talani this because she had done an internship in Houston when we were in college. I said, are there mountain ranges in Houston at all? And she said, no. Like, why is there a mountain at Astro World? And then even when I asked that question, I asked, why is it called Astro World? And I said, oh, that's right. The Houston Astros.
That doesn't make any. Yeah, no, that's not it.
Well, it could be it. But then I would ask myself, why are the Houston Astros called the Houston Astros?
Right.
Why is Houston related to anything astrological?
Right.
Well, that's because NASA's in Houston.
Hmm.
So now that all makes sense. But the disconnect is people don't realize that NASA is another Tower of Babel.
Yeah.
They don't know that. They might even hear that and think, what the heck is Brandon talking about? Werner von Braun is a Nazi scientist brought over to help start NASA. Even more, Jack Parsons, the creator of the rocket propulsion program at NASA, the only reason we have things that light on fire and go up is because he started that. Now, ask me who Jack Parsons was. Well, he was a Thelemite, which is a follower of Aleister Crowley in his Thelema religion. Sexual deviance, drug-induced things, occult magic, and channeling. All of this is deep, and we're so many layers down that things can just take place right in front of your eyes and you not know what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So Houston's NASA program is just a desire to ascend into the heavens in the same way as what was happening in Genesis 11. And in Genesis 11, they were not merely building a tall tower, they were making contact with spiritual beings. That's what the desire was. And that's what the heart of the desire is for Jack Parsons, who started the rocket propulsion program at NASA. Now, what does this have to do with Astroworld? I get it. Even if you want to agree with me there, it's like, okay, I get it. Houston has shady occult background, and then the name was used at Astroworld. Well, no, it's still, we can still go further. That mountain there is also tied to Genesis 11, but before Genesis 11, it's tied to Genesis 6. And I think that all of this stuff flies over the radar of Christians who see these things, because you remember that sermon you heard on Genesis 6? No.
From
No,
oh,
you don't.
I'm about to say, from who?
Yeah.
Like,
No. The answer is no. You haven't heard a sermon on Genesis 6.
mm-hmm.
You haven't heard a sermon on Genesis 6. Genesis 6 tells a story of rebellious sons of God coming down to man and mating with human women. The expanded version of that story is that they exchanged knowledge for the women. The mountain that they came down on is Mount Hermon. The mountain that is the only mountain in Caesarea Philippi where Jesus took his disciples up to a very high mountain is Mount Hermon, where he transfigured, where he told Peter, on this rock I'll build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. At the foot of Mount Hermon in Caesarea Philippi, to the pagans, it was known as the gates of hell. That's literally what it was referred to as. Not only was it referred to as the gates of hell, there was a I can't think right now. There was a place of worship there at the foot of Mount Hermon to the pagan god of Pan.
Hmm.
And if anybody knows about the lore of Pan, it's that he would use a flute to lure people, mainly nymphs, women, young women, to ravage them. Lure them by music to ravage them. Not only would he do that, he would invoke petrifying fear and literally where we get this word from, panic. He would invoke panic in the hearts of those that are around him to petrify them and devour them in whatever way that he desired. That's literally where we get our word pandemonium. That's what you saw at Astroworld. People jumping over fences, climbing gates. I mean, if you watch the documentary, you can just make that out yourself. It's literal pandemonium. And do you know why this Astroworld was so anticipated? Because it came in 2021. What was happening in 2020, Darren?
With George Floyd stuff?
Pandemic.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
The pandemic was in 2020. There were no concerts. There were no festivals. And now we have the largest festival happening in the United States, in Houston. And the result is over 300 injuries and 8 deaths. And people's description when they put it to words is that it felt like they were in hell.
Like, it felt like we was in a concert in hell. You couldn't breathe. You couldn't see. Like, just imagine all the people they're going to find tonight who was in that crowd, who nobody could see, who nobody could hear, who passed out.
It was so demonic. The energy was so demonic. The set was demonic. Travis was demonic. We were literally in hell. Like, it felt like we were in hell.
I'm going to take a couple days off from posting because I literally watched somebody die right in front of me.
My question is this. Did Travis get the wrong ancestors that time? Is that a fair question? You think I'm being funny? What because I feel like Travis's music and those who are like Travis, they were a part of that Sinners montage, weren't they?
Right.
Wasn't hip hop a part of that montage? Here's an even better question. Are there bad spirits? Are there bad ancestors? What does bad mean? How does one deal with them? Do we do what Mama Juju Boo Boo did in the Sinners movie? Is that the answer? Make a quick plan, say, hold up, let me die first or whatever so I can see you in heaven. What's heaven? Do we wear all white? See, if we're going to dive deep into Ryan Coogler's movie, then let's ask questions about everything. We have to ask questions about it all. And if we don't have the truth, then your answer is meaningless. But the truth exists. The truth exists. That movie was very explicit to show that Christianity is impotent and hoodoo is all powerful. I actually don't care what they think about Christianity. It's Christ who's omnipotent. However they want to address the way people practice things and do all that stuff, it's Christ who's omnipotent. This is the way we're going to end. We're going to end looking at Ephesians 5. And we're going to look at Ephesians 5, written by Paul, to people he knew lived in a world that constantly want to influence them on how they think about the truth. That's what Ephesians 5 is. Let me pull it up. Okay. Let's come back here. Okay. This is how we'll end with Ephesians 5. Therefore, be imitators of God as beloved children and walk in love, as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us, a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. But sexual immorality, all impurity, all covetousness must not even be named among you, as is proper among the saints. Let there be no filthiness, nor foolish talk, nor crude joking, Darren, which are out of place, but instead let there be thanksgiving. For you may be sure of this, that everyone who is sexually immoral or impure or who is covetous, that is an idolater, has no inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and God. Let no one deceive you with empty words, for because of these things the wrath of God comes upon the sons of disobedience. Therefore, don't become partners with them. For at one time you were darkness, and now you are light in the Lord. Walk as children of light, for the fruit of light is found in all that is good and right and true. Try to discern what is pleasing to the Lord. Take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. For it is shameful even to speak of the things that they do in secret. But when anything is exposed by the light, it becomes visible. For anything that becomes visible is light. Therefore it says, awake, O sleeper, and arise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. Look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of the time, because the days are evil.